The topic of today is voice, but not voice as in phonetics, voice in grammar. I've already done two videos before. In one of them, I looked at the term tense. We looked at tense and lax. So tense there was an adjective used in phonetics, phonology. Then we looked at tense as a noun in grammar. And then there's also a video about tense and time. Now, I thought it would be a good idea to look at voice, which is also a term in phonetics, voicing, we have voiced, voiceless, and then compare it to the term voice in grammar, for the grammatical voice. So we have a passive voice and an active voice in grammar. I'm not going to delve into voice in phonetics a lot, but just as a quick reminder, voice in phonetics, it creates the adjectives voiced and voiceless, and they refer to the voicing of a sound segment that is the result of the vibration of the vocal folds. So voiced consonants, for example, like the, voiced by labial plosive, is produced while vibrating the vocal cords, while the voiceless version of the same consonant, that is pa, is produced without vibrating the vocal folds. So, and I'm using vocal fold and vocal cord interchangeably because they mean the same thing. In the discussion of grammar, however, when we talk about voice, we do not talk about voiced or voiceless, but rather the active voice or the passive voice. In other words, today we're going to talk about the grammatical voice, which is a discussion relevant to the grammatical analysis of a sentence, clause, or verb form. Even if you look at the sentence, the focus is indeed on the verb. Remember, I have mentioned in earlier videos that the verb is the heart of the sentence. Whenever you think of the verb, change the V into a heart and think of the verb as the heart of a sentence. Without a verb, you don't have a sentence. In the same way that without a heart, a person cannot live. That's how important the verb is. And of course, if you want to know more about verbs, you have to listen to the entirety of this video because the discussion of active versus passive is primarily about verbs. The cat chased the mouse. That's an active sentence. The mouse was chased by the cat. That's a passive sentence. What is going on here? You need to make a distinction between subject versus object. In English, the word order is SVO, which is subject, verb, object. So in the case of the cat chased the mouse, as you can see, it's subject, verb, object. And then in the case of the mouse was chased, again, you have subject and verb, you don't have an object. Because in the passive sentence, you do not have an object. So as you can see, the first thing that happened here, we have removed the object in the passive sentence. In transformational grammar, we look at the active sentence, in this case the cat chased the mouse, as the canonical form. And we say that the passive sentence is derived from the active sentence. You see here, you need to have some discussion of semantics. Here the cat is the subject, but it is also the agent. And then you have the verb, and then you have the mouse, which is the patient. Basically, you have agent, verb, patient. In the second sentence, we have patient, verb. But you see here, which we have patient, verb, but we still have the subject. Therefore, patient becomes subject. That's what happens. The prepositional phrase by the cat is optional indeed. You don't have to mention it. You can just say the mouse was chased. You can say the mouse was chased by the cat. In this case, you have a prepositional phrase. And you might say, oh, we have the agent, but yes, the agent is not the subject anymore. And you might say, okay, why do we do this if we want to say the mouse was chased by the cat? The point is, it's a question of retopicalization, or it's a question of which words you want to emphasize. When you say the cat chased the mouse, you're emphasizing, you're putting the cat, you're fronting it, the emphasis is on that. But then when you turn it into passive, the mouse was chased by the cat, the mouse, which is the patient, becomes the object of focus because it is fronted. So it's a question of emphasis or topicalization, or you could say retopicalization. An active sentence is a sentence in which the noun phrase subject in deep structure is the noun phrase subject in surface structure. The horse threw the rider. The rider was thrown by the horse. So as I told you, the deep structure, we have subject being agent, then the verb, then we have object being the patient. This is the deep structure. If you have the same thing in surface structure, you're having an active sentence. If you do not have that, if you have the patient as subject, it means you have changed the deep structure on the surface. And that is another way of defining passive versus active. A passive sentence is a sentence in which the verbal complex, the verb and its dependents, all the words serving as the verb, contains a form of to be followed by a verb in the participle form. That's another way of looking at the passive. The car was chased by that dog. According to this definition, we have a verbal complex, which is was chased. Here, was chased has a form of the verb to be, which is was plus the participle, which is chased. It's the past participle. That's another way of looking at the passive sentence. In a passive sentence, the direct object of a transitive verb in deep structure functions as the subject in surface structure. The dog chased the car. The car was chased by the dog. How does this definition apply here? In a passive sentence, which is this one, the direct object of a transitive verb, which is a car, and the transitive verb is chased, in deep structure, and this is deep structure, functions as the subject in surface structure. This is surface structure, the subject is the car. Okay, let's move on to different views of the passive sentence again. In terms of syntax, a passive construction is the detransitized counterpart of an active construction. In terms of semantics, the passive retains the same number of thematic roles as the active while changing the relative prominence, different topicalization. Okay, let me elaborate on this. In terms of syntax, the passive construction is the detransitized. What is detransitized? Remove the transitive aspect. Okay, what is a transitive verb? A transitive verb is a verb that requires a direct object. The dog chased. The verb chase is transitive. It requires an object. In this case, the object is the car. So when you turn this into the car was chased, you mention the transitive verb. You provide a construction for it in a way that it does not require an object anymore. So you take away that transitivity requirement. And when I say the car was chased, you don't ask me it was chased what. But if I tell you the dog chased, you would ask me the dog chased what. When I turn it into passive, you don't ask that question anymore. So let's call this detransitization. If you look at it semantically, the passive retains the same number of thematic roles as the active. So thematic roles, patient, agent, you retain the same roles, the same number, while changing the relative prominence. In the sentence, the dog chased the car, the agent has been fronted, it has become prominent, topicalized. But in the passive sentence, the car has been fronted and topicalized or made prominent. Now, just a little more to go. In an active sentence, the surface subject is a logical subject and the surface object, the logical object. Here, what we mean by logical subject, we mean agent, and the logical object, we mean patient. So this is another way of talking about passives and actives.